Is your job search stuck? Maybe you're not getting any interviews with employers. Or maybe you are, but no job offers. Or you may be new and not even know where to start. This is Charles Max Wood, and I'm releasing a new course and ebook on how to find a job as a software developer. The course walks you through the process of finding the types of companies you want to work for, getting their attention, and putting your best foot forward as the candidate they want. I've coached dozens of developers in looking for jobs and have been able to help several people find jobs within 2 weeks to 2 months. So whether you're new to development, can't find a great job that fits what you want, or are looking for remote work from an area without a strong tech community, I can help. Go to getacoderjob.com and sign up today. Hi, this is Charles Max Wood, and I've been asked more times than I can count, how do I stay current? There's a lot to this question, and I'm working on a solution: code badges. That's right, you heard me right. Basically, the idea is that you come and do a code badge, and that gets you an introduction to a topic. Then you can decide if you want to pursue it further. But while working on the badge, you gain enough proficiency to be able to pick it up again if you need. A lot of technology comes through on the bleeding edge, and not all of it sticks, but the principles do. So doing badges on the technologies that will get you ahead will provide you with experience needed to stay competitive. Plus, it offers social proof that you know something about the topic. The project is on Kickstarter right now. You can support it and get on the launch list at codebadge.org. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My Angular Story. This week we're talking to Rae Krantz. Rae, do you want to say hi?
Hey everybody.
Do you want to just give us a brief introduction as far as like where you're at these days, what you're doing, where you're working, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I work at a company called Tallwave. It's located in Phoenix, Arizona. I am located in Akron, Ohio. So the remote life is awesome. And I also like being able to fly to Phoenix when it's snowing here. So yeah, and I do primarily Angular work there on a small dev team. And yeah, it's fun. That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, I interviewed Tina from Tallwave last week, so.
Yeah, she is great. She's really, really great. She is one of the 6 reasons I say that I have an awesome team at Tallwave. It's a really fantastic work environment.
So, yeah, I did mention that I talked to Tina last week, and her episode is going to go live on my JavaScript story.
Sweet.
And this one is my Angular story is what we scheduled it. So we're going to dive a little bit more into Angular, I guess, than into JavaScript. But
yeah,
it's definitely interesting just to see where people come from and that we all have so much in common. I'd love to just dive in. How did you get into coding?
Yeah, I started with a Coursera class on Python, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago by now. And then just sort of hung out on the fringes, so to speak, for a while. But then I moved to Akron and joined the Akron Women in Tech group here. And I think it was just a year after that, maybe 2. I forget. I'm sorry. Anyway, but I got involved with that group and started actually investing. I used like free code camp and things like that. Then from people that I had met by attending that meetup as well, I got connected with a local company in Akron that was looking for a QA person at the time. So I was able to get that position, moved from there into DevOps, and then the next logical progression, of course, is Angular development. But yeah, I did enjoy the DevOps role at that company, which is called a VHD. I enjoyed it a lot, but this role with Tallwave just sort of came about actually by Twitter. And
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was the most random thing. So I randomly followed, I still don't remember how or why I followed this guy. I think someone retweeted him and I looked at his timeline and he worked in tech and he sometimes said funny jokes. And I was like, I'll follow that guy. And then it was a couple months after that where I guess liked one of his tweets. And he DMs me and he goes, oh, hey, I saw you liked one of my tweets. And I also saw you have some Angular stuff on your GitHub. You want to apply for a job at my company?
Awesome.
Yeah. And everything, everything looked great from the outside, and I joined up and everything has been pretty true to that. So yeah.
How long has that been?
Since December of last year. So 9-10 months, coming up on a year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a little curious. I mean, why Angular? Why not Vue or React, which I talk to more and more people and those sound sexier, I guess.
Yeah. The Angular part was because I had started a side project with a couple of friends, and they actually had the strong opinion about Angular. And their reasoning was that Angular handled a lot of security things, like I guess automatically, that you then, didn't have to worry about so much. And at the time, I knew absolutely nothing about either Angular or React. So I said, oh, sure. Sounds good to me. And I jumped into it. And since then, I'm pretty solidly on the Angular side. I've seen React. I guess it's cool. People like it. But I do like that Angular has made the, I guess, best practices decisions for you, so to speak. Like when you need to make an HTTP call, you don't have to go look at, a handful of different packages and decide which one to use. It's already there and you can keep moving forward. So I do like that kind of built-in aspect that Angular has.
Yeah, and it's a pretty common thing that I found. People tend to, at least when they're getting started, go with technologies that they know they can get help with, right? They know other people that are doing it, and then they find a reason to love it. And so what you're saying, it squares up with a lot of other folks. I'm curious, anybody that we have heard of or had on the shows that got you into Angular, or just, regular devs out there doing the good work?
I didn't really have a network actually at the time. And it's funny, those two people who wanted to use Angular, neither of them were developers. So
awesome.
So they knew about it, I guess, from other coworkers of theirs. And so then I just started learning it. I started with the docs. That Heroes tutorial, that's really great. It's really
the tour
great.
Of Heroes.
Yeah. And even going back, a couple of my coworkers have started to learn Angular as well now. And they've asked questions that came up as they were going through that tour of Heroes. And now with my experience looking back, I realized, oh, wow, yeah, it was really good. It's already covering, these pieces that are really necessary to kind of understand how everything works. So that was mainly it. That, some Angular in-depth, that blog, a lot of, I guess, Stack Overflow. Oh, you know what I used early on? Is it ngdocs.io? Is that the one? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really good early on as well.
Yeah, that's run by Joe Eames and Alyssa Nichol, who are regulars on the Adventures in Angular podcast.
I think that's where I heard of it, actually. Yeah. So that podcast or this podcast also was very helpful too. Yeah.
Very cool. So you get into Angular. I'm really curious, especially with finding a job over a tweet. But it sounds like you were pretty new. They found you on Twitter. One of the things, and I've been talking to a lot of people lately because I'm writing a book. I'm all over the place. Been writing a book about how to find a job as a software developer. And a lot of the people who are really struggling with this are new. So once he reached out and said, hey, do you want to apply? I mean, what did you do? What did you have in place that you could use to actually show them that you were capable of doing the job?
The interview process that I went through for this position was, I think, very atypical. It was a lot of conversation about technical things, but, not whiteboarding, not algorithm tests. So that's really what it was based on. And I had a few things on my GitHub, nothing super fancy, but it really came down to just talking about the work that I had done and, my thought process and how I came about it. So I really appreciated that, first of all, that it was an interview that was realistic, I guess. And yeah, so as far as I can go back, though, for, I guess, maybe more traditionally tougher interview. My interview for my first job, I did have to do a kata for that, which a kata is it's basically an algorithm test, but it's a programming kind of algorithm challenge. And so I sat down and I was terrified for that. And I'll tell you, even before going into that, it was one of the more simple ones that they give to, more entry level people. What was it? The FizzBuzz.
FizzBuzz, yep.
So going in, I know there's going to be a kata in this interview. I know it's going to be one of these two, the FizzBuzz or the other, the Fibonacci one. So I ran through it many times beforehand going in. And even then I was terrified, couldn't think straight. When you sit down with someone and you're programming something, it's just terrifying. But I would say the good part and then the saving grace of it is if you feel like you're frozen, just talk out loud what you're thinking. And if they're a good interviewer, that's what they're looking for anyway, is that thought process and how you come to the solution rather than if you just have, quote unquote, the right answer. So that was really helpful. And then knowing people in the company was really helpful. Honest, you can't get around that, right? Like, you got to know people. I don't think this Twitter job is the closest thing I've ever come to getting a job without knowing someone. And even then it was still a network effect.
Yeah, that's the focus of the book is I haven't explicitly called it out, but I'm going to go back and redo part of it. And that's the real push, right? Is that it's easier to find a job if you can have somebody go and introduce you rather than, and the last handful of jobs that I got as software developer and several of the contracts I had when I was freelancing all came through people I knew. And so it's much easier to make that happen. And so my book is focused on that effect, right? Of creating those opportunities through the people you know. So,
yeah, definitely.
So what are you working on now?
In my day job, I'm doing the front end for like a financial management application. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about that, so that's all I'll say. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've learned it's been really good for getting my RxJS knowledge cemented and getting that set. In my free time, it is very hard, as I'm sure many people listening are familiar with, to push through one thing. But the latest thing that I have picked up that I'm really enjoying is actually a Rust programming language book, which has nothing to do with Angular, but
Rust is fascinating.
Yeah, it is so cool. So it's the No Starch Press book that's literally just called the Rust programming language. And that has been really, their like garbage collection stuff and their ownership stuff, like how they handle concurrency. It's all really, really interesting. And I do miss, I mentioned I did work in a DevOps position for a short time there, and I do miss that side of it. So I'm hopeful that, as you know, I've talked with my director at Tallwave, Scott, the guy who found me on Twitter, a few times as well. Like, I do enjoy Angular, but I and I'm sorry if this is a bad thing to say on an Angular podcast, but I don't want to just do like front end, I want to do the whole scope of stuff. So, and he's been really great about that, like talking to a couple other project managers. We're a consultancy, so we get different projects in. So he's been talking to other project managers about letting me start to slowly, observe and get involved maybe with some other projects that are coming in. So that's been really cool to see that happen. And then I've tried to look at React, but I can't make it's one of those things where like they both do the same thing, right? So if you're good at one, the only reason to like learn React is so that I, if I wanted to like get a React job and, because I can do all the same stuff with what I already know. So it's hard to find the motivation there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to a number of people about staying current. That seems to be the two things that people bring to my attention anyway, is I'm stuck on my job search or I want to stay current. And when they want to stay current, a lot of times it boils down to either I want to learn the technologies I want to learn. So it seems like Rust, right? Or it's job mobility. And so I want to stay current on technology so that if my current situation changes, right, I get a new boss or, they adopt some new technology around here, or I see some opportunity out there that I just want to go after, then I can move on it. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. And it really drove me to start thinking about developer freedom and what that looks like. So but I won't, this is about you, not me. So
I was going to say, that makes
I'll talk about that somewhere else. Yeah. But
I have wanted to look at Vue though. Along those lines, I don't know anything about Vue aside from, what was it? The guy who made it came from the Angular team, right? And then wanted to make it better, like Angular JS, I guess, at the time. And then, like, I heard someone, I think actually on this Angular podcast, someone say that Vue was his vision of what Angular, he wanted Angular 2+ to be.
Right.
So I am curious about looking at that and kind of just playing with the differences there.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's definitely been interesting to dig into it. That's the technology I've been playing with lately. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, that and Elixir.
Yeah, that looks cool too. There's too much to learn. Oh, there's so many interesting things out there. Yeah, I did a talk recently on, well, I guess this year I've given it a few times, just comparing a bunch of different programming languages. And it was really hard because you had to, it was kind of looking at the quirks and the interesting things about different languages. And it was really, really hard to limit myself to a number of languages that could conceivably fit within a 40-minute talk slot. Because, yeah, they all have their quirks.
So we can link out to that.
Oh, sure. I spoke at Code Mash, which is a conference in Ohio, Sandusky, Ohio, and then a meetup in Grand Rapids, I think called Grand Rapids Software Craftsmanship, maybe? Yeah. And then I spoke at Self Conference in Detroit, which unfortunately they didn't do recordings, and that was the version of the talk that I think I liked the best, but that's how life goes. And then I also spoke at Full Stack Fest in Barcelona, which I have to give a shout out to them. That was the most perfectly run conference I have been to. Just the attention to detail they had, in terms of even, the podium, poster board that was decorating on the stage. And then they had food. They had so much food, which is always great. So much food. And the way they did lunch was really cool. They were in the middle of Barcelona, right? So they had 10 different restaurants you could choose from, and they provided lunch tickets. So you would just take a lunch ticket from, you could pick a restaurant, take a lunch ticket, and then go get lunch. And that was, I think, a really creative solution for that. Anyway, and then even there was someone emailed about a code of conduct, violation, and it was addressed immediately by the MC after the next talk, on point, so it was just, everything was, they picked speakers up from the airport. It was really, really great. So if people are interested in talking, definitely, actually, all the conferences, Self Conference was really great too. Highly recommend applying to any of them. Code Mash has really great swag, and you're at a water park.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think the one that I keep hearing about at a water park is that conference.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll encourage people to go look up your talks.
Sweet.
And then it also sounds like you were involved in some of the community organizations out there in Akron.
Yeah, I was involved with Akron Women in Tech for the first several years, and that was really great. We did workshops and, your typical meetups. And one thing we did that I really liked, we did it once and then haven't repeated it yet, but it was coding retreat type thing. And we just rented out a community space, and we had some food, and it was just a time on a Saturday for people to come and spend 8 hours working on whatever project they wanted to. And then we had a yoga break, I think early afternoon or something. So that was really nice. It was an actual productive day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which can be hard to come by sometimes. And then, I'm also helping organize a Django Girls event on October 6th. So if you're in the Cleveland area, I think we've closed applications, but we still should have the wait list open. So you can check that out if you or someone wants to learn how to code. It'll be a fun time. Doesn't Angular have an equivalent to that? A Django Girls or Ruby Bridge or anything
NG Girls.
NG Girls. Oh, okay. Oh, neat. I have to look at that.
Yeah, we've done some episodes on it as well. So
cool.
I think it's just nggirls.org. It might be ng-girls.org. I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Good stuff. So, anyway, do you have any other advice for people who are trying to get into tech?
Gosh, do it before you have kids. And if you have kids, I'm sorry, that's really, really hard. I had a kid a couple years ago, and it definitely severely limited my ability or my even desire to go to meetups, because, your energy is at an all-time low for a few months at least. And it's just, it's different. You definitely, so if you don't have kids, use your Netflix time and, study well while you can. And if you do, you have to get really good about small chunks of time. If I can get through a chapter a day of that Rust book, that's fantastic. That's great. Or, 20 minutes here and there of figuring out a singular concept or something. I do actually work through lunches quite a lot, because I I have a set amount of daycare time. And so I try to make use of that, right? To to be able to spend that like doing the things that I do enjoy, but it's hard to sit at a computer. And my kid will literally walk over to me on my computer and pull me away or try to sit on my lap. Like it's a it's a little bit of a battle. So there are challenges, and we all face those. And so I really appreciate, I know there's been more of a push lately, especially for conferences and stuff, to have things like childcare, and that is really, really important. Like even in the days leading up to self conference, I was almost making myself sick from worry, because I think so 2 or 3 weeks before self conference, I'd been at Pi, Ohio. And that was just for a day and a half. Like I left Saturday morning, I came back Sunday evening. And my kid, he's young, he's not even 2 yet. And so while I was gone, he was just he was a little bit of a wreck. He had, he would recover and he could function, but he had some temper tantrums and stuff. And so I was really worried, because then I was going to be gone for 3 days. And I thought, it'd be great if I could just bring him. That would help. And it worked out pretty well, because I think the Pi, Ohio was like good practice. And then when I left again, we were very intentional about like, hey, Mama's going bye-bye.
Right.
Say it in 2-year-old terms. And then he was fine. And then, so after the first few hours of being at self-conf, I was not at all stressed about that anymore. So that was really great to be able to lose that stress. But there is, and then obviously childcare in general is expensive. But that was PyCon was in Cleveland this year. They were awesome. They had $50 a day childcare. And if you couldn't afford that, you could, ask for assistance as well, I believe. But that was awesome, because one of the days was on a Friday, and I was able to take advantage of that childcare piece. So that was really nice as well. So
I hear about childcare, and I'm always going, I have zero desire to take my kids to a conference.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah,
none.
It's definitely not a desire. It is really great to be at a conference without a kid. That is for sure. Yeah. But sometimes it's
yeah, I get that.
It's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have 5 kids. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. They'll keep you busy.
Yeah, definitely. But my oldest is 12. So yeah, if I took him to a conference, it'd be a little bit different. But my 3-year-old, that would just be no fun.
Yeah. Well, because then you can't do the after parties and stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the after parties really aren't my scene anyway, but still, it's just, And so the way that we do it is, I travel a lot more than my wife, and she's a trooper, and she takes care of the kids, because she stays at home anyway. But yeah, I make it a point to send her on a trip to visit her best friend in South Carolina or whatever periodically. So.
Ah, nice.
And then I take the kids, and so I don't get anything done, even though I'm at home.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's how it goes. Yeah.
Well, cool. That's really exciting, though. That people are at least paying attention to. Hey, there are people in different circumstances. We want them here, and let's see what we can do to make sure that it works out for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's really encouraging.
Yep. So I guess the last thing I'm going to ask before we do picks is, anything you're looking forward to in the future? You're diving into Rust. Do you think that's a direction your career's going to go, or is it just an interesting thing? And where do you hope you wind up?
That is a really fantastic question. I broad strokes, I want to move into the software architect role. I'm naturally a big picture person, and the puzzle aspect of programming was one of the draws to it, right? Getting the pieces to fit together and making things work together. So I like the idea of having that larger kind of scope, the larger view over things. In terms of the specific languages, I sort of just take as they come, I guess. Yeah, Rust, it would be awesome if Rust was something that I used later on down the line in the next couple years or something. Angular is fun, but it's funny. Honestly, I know I was throwing some shade at React a little bit earlier, but I don't have anything against it. If I had a job that used it, I would learn it, and I'm sure I would enjoy it. It's fine. These are all different tools that we can use. So in terms of technologies, I'll definitely keep pushing with Angular. I do want to get really good, that in-depth knowledge in a few areas. So Angular is one of those, probably Rust or Python for another one. And then, everything else just as it comes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we have shows on Angular, React, and Vue. So,
cool.
If people are looking to learn any of those technologies, we got you covered, folks. But yeah, and I kind of echo what you're saying a little bit. since I do shows on all three frameworks, people ask me which one I prefer. And it's like, well, I'm having a lot of fun with Vue right now. Mm-hmm. But, Angular does a great job. And yeah, it just depends on what you want. And so, if you're looking to do mobile, for example, React Native is pretty awesome. And if you're going to do React Native, maybe it makes sense to do React on your front end, but maybe not. So yeah, there are a lot of things to think about and a lot of reasons to go with the different ones. But yeah, definitely something to just kind of think about and go play with them all.
Yeah. Pokemon style.
There we go. Nice. So do you have some picks for us? Do you have things you want to shout out about?
Yeah, definitely. One of them was going to be that Rust book. So definitely check that out if you're interested in back-end type languages. Something I found or I heard about recently. Oh, let me first give a shout out to the Women in Tech Chat Slack, which you can find at witchat.github.io. That is where I found out about the next two things that I'm going to give shout outs to. It's a really awesome international community for women in technology. So the first one it's Chelsea Troy. It's this person's blog, and they have a section called Leveling Up. Let me pull it up so I can. Yeah, so it looks really neat. I just found this, I think, last week, or was heard about it in the Wit Chat last week, and she takes this approach of approaching leveling up in your programming skills, kind of like a video game type mentality, right? As leveling up might imply. So I really like the strategy she has there in terms of how to learn effectively and to learn well, because how to learn is just as hard as the actual learning. So that's really neat. And then the other one is Medium, the Medium site. They have a tool called Snowflake, and it's how they assess levels. And it's really neat. If you go to snowflake.medium.com, they have this interactive level assessment for their engineer positions. So if you say, I'm a 1 in mobile skills, but a 4 in servers and a 3 in foundations or whatever, and you set levels, then it does all the computations for you and puts it out. So we're actually going to start using that at Tallwave, and I'm really excited for that because at Tallwave, our job descriptions are pretty good in terms of what it says is the skill that you do need, but you still need a way to measure that, right? Of someone to be able to assess when people are ready to move up and stuff like that. So I showed this to the team last week, and then my director Scott pulled it down and was working on it over the last couple days, and we're starting to kind of fine tune it to use it for our team. Yeah, at Tallwave. So I'm really excited about that. It's very useful. And I also do have to give a shout out. If you're in the Cleveland area, there's also a Cleveland Tech Slack. Check that out. It's pretty good. Those are the two I hang out at most of the time. I know everyone's on Slack overload, but I mostly focus on those two. And then, I'm very, very grateful to have a spouse who is supportive and doesn't view childcare as babysitting, because I know that's a thing that sometimes people will say about when they have to watch their kid, but he's just so supportive with when I have to or decide to. I don't have to, right? I decide to apply to these conferences. I'm going to go to Spain for a week. Is that cool? And he's really awesome with it, and encouraging when I'm stressing out about leaving him home alone, because that's half of it too. It's the guilt of leaving one parent alone with a kid because they're just sometimes
I completely understand.
Yeah.
I have help, right? I'll have my 11-year-old and my 12-year-old help with my 3-year-old. But if you're not in that position, and for a while I wasn't, it's I just left you home with 4 kids under the age of 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have to give another shout out to my team real quick. Speaking of kids, because this is something that came up recently. We were talking about our interview process and kind of talking about, the questions we ask and what are we trying to learn from them. And a couple of us brought up that what are your hobbies question sounds really innocent. But for my part, especially when I was asked that question, I froze because I thought, wait, I can't reveal that I have a kid in this interview because that'll probably make me look bad, right? Because bias and all that. And so that's where most, at the time, he was 9 months old. I'm that's my free time. I don't have hobbies right now. And so it was really stressful. And I froze for a minute, and then I was hiking? and stuff. And it was really awkward. And someone else pointed out too, they're like, yeah, look, if you like doing this thing that I hate, that's going to make me want to hire you less, which is not fair because that doesn't, pertain to whether or not you'd be a good teammate or, good at the job. It just pertains to if we have like similar interests or not. So we scratched that question from our interview process. And I was really proud about that. So that was really encouraging to kind of also be supported by the rest of my team too, of like, oh yeah, good point. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most companies aren't self-aware enough to actually evaluate how they do the interviews. In fact, most companies that I've talked to, they don't even talk about it, right? So they're the people they're talking to, they just show up, and whoever's doing the interview just asks whatever questions come to mind. And so I really love the idea of actually knowing this is what we want and this is how we're going to find it out. Like this is we're going to find out what we want.
Right, because that's the point.
Yeah. The bias question is really tricky just because it's so subjective. Some people have a heavy bias and some people don't. And so, but yeah, just to be thinking about it, just to be aware, you know what? I'm human and I'm going to make some decisions that probably aren't the best ones.
Right. So. Yeah. And that's the thing. And like, we all have bias, and it's about accepting that like, oh, I might have some bias. Like if you acknowledge it, it has less power. Right. So. Yep.
Well, I'm going to jump in here with a couple of picks. So one pick I have, I recently updated my computer to macOS Mojave. Of course, by the time this comes out, I think it's going to actually be, I'm on the beta version because we're a couple of weeks out from it actually being released. But anyway, we actually had a little tech episode right when we started this show because of that, I think. But anyway, it's been working really well. I've been really happy with it. I ran into an issue with macOS High Sierra. I have a docking station that I spent like $200 or $300 on to, so I can run like 3 or 4 monitors, which is funny because when I code, I only really use like 2, and one's for my code and one's for my web browser. But anyway, I wanted to be able to run the monitors. And so something in High Sierra killed the display link driver. And so that's why I upgraded. But I've been pretty happy with it. I am going through a couple of things to get Homebrew working, and Visual Studio Code cannot find Git at the moment. But like if I do a which Git in my terminal, it finds it just fine. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. But it looks like other people have had this problem and fixed it. So it's probably a 5-minute fix. But yeah, beyond that, it's working really, really well. And my docking station works now. So I can run all my monitors without having to plug into all of the USB-C ports on the sides. So
nice.
Yeah. So I'm going to shout out about that. Another one that I'm going to shout out about, and this is another thing I've used for a while, is ScreenFlow. So ScreenFlow 8 is out, and it came with a whole bunch of new features that I never knew I wanted, and now I don't know if I can live without. So, you can set up templates for projects and things like that, which is a big deal for me because I'm getting into doing like YouTube videos, and I would like to have like the lower third in a standard way and not have to add it in every time. Before, what I'd have to do is I'd have to open up another project, copy it out of there, and then paste it into the other one.
Sorry, what is ScreenFlow? I'm not familiar with that one.
So ScreenFlow is a program on the Mac that records your screen.
Oh, that makes sense.
And it does, it has a whole editing suite and stuff in it. If you're not willing to drop, I think it's $100, $130 for the license. I've had ScreenFlow forever, so I just pay the upgrade fee when it comes back around, which is why I'm not sure on the actual price for a new license. But I totally lost my train of thought there.
It lets you do the bottom bar with the... Yeah.
So anyway, if you're going to do recordings on the cheap, you can use QuickTime, which comes on your Mac.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Then you have to edit it with something else. And ScreenFlow just gives you a lot of options, and you can kind of fine tune what you're doing. So that's why I use it. I've used it for a long, long time. Back when I actually had a screencast series. So anyway,
cool.
Pretty happy with that. But yeah, ScreenFlow 8 is awesome. All right, well, one last question for you. Do you have a blog or GitHub or Twitter or other places where people can find you online?
Yeah, my website is rachelkrantz.com, which I should update before this comes out. And then my Twitter is Rust Belt Rae, and that is because I'm currently in the Rust Belt. Moved here a few years ago. Love it. People are nice. What else? My GitHub is Krantzinator, but I need to put more up on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly those. And the 2 Slacks I mentioned, I'm in those places very often.
Awesome. Well, it was good to talk and exciting to kind of get your story and hear where you're focusing these days. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and wrap this one up, and we will be back next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.